Alright, welcome. I've got the fan in the background. I hope that it isn't... I hope that, number one, it isn't audible, and secondly, it's not annoying if it is audible. But let me know if you can hear it, and I will adjust. You may hear it when I'm silent. Sounds like a continuous vape. Yeah, that's okay. That will mask the noise in me. Alright, so we'll hang around for a little bit. We won't do a long one. There's really no need to. Let me try and turn it. Man, I don't even want to turn it down a little. I don't even want to turn it down. It's nice. Okay, give me 1 sec. Alright, it's been turned down, and that's it. You guys can... you guys can deal with it from here. Alright, let's just look at the charts. We'll get started, because there's not a huge amount to go through today. I can hear the fans begin with shit. I brought your attention to it, huh? Okay. Okay, so, you know, like, first of all, the market is mixed at the moment. I think that everything that's happening at the moment is still, you know, with a relative bearish intention. So, you know, we've seen quite a big squeeze on BTC. But this is pretty much, you know, kind of synonymous with what we've seen over the recent sort of days anyway. Where we've just seen this price action, you know, essentially spike back up into, you know, structurally remaining the same. You know, if we consider that, you know, we've got lower lows and lower highs still here. So structurally, we're still the same. But very often, you know, these sharp moves here cause you to think twice about the direction that you're taking trades in, whether or not you should now be getting long. You start over-analyzing the fact there's a big green candle in the middle of this selling off. And really, you know, it's kind of just, it's just maintaining structure, right? It's just still maintaining the downtrend here. Now, if we do start to break structure and we get a higher high, you know, we'll be shooting into this resistance, and then obviously we'd be looking for the higher low here to confirm that structure change and potentially change our thoughts on the market. But right now, everything really just seems to be in line with, you know, squeezing late shorters, still maintaining the market structure, and therefore that sort of downwards pressure that the market is currently giving us. Same with ETH, you know, same shit here on ETH basically. Nice divergence down at the very last sort of bit of this selling off here on ETH, and now just maintaining around the 1900. ETH hasn't really done a bad job, to be honest with you. You know, the picture here is pretty decent. You'll see lots of diagonals that I've been messing around with and taking a look at RSI down here with the momentum. So, you know, that's all I've really been doing, certainly from ETH's perspective, is just kind of watching to see if we're going to have any pop of momentum when we finally break through this RSI here. Especially if it happens here, because we would have this unusual divergence in play if we do get a strong move from this region on ETH. It is an unusual shape divergence, but it is now to the question that we can try and move higher from here. And then, you know, kind of the higher time frame perspective here, I think this is from the daily, just looking at where the selling off has really been, you know, taking place, which we're starting to see again, this diagonal form through here, where we're starting to see the selling that's taking place above this level now. Obviously, we know that here at 1800 is really the support level that ETH is trying to hold on to, and if we lose the 1800, And it's going to be a pretty swift visit down to this 1400 region and then hope for the bounce like this from there. BNB trade just while we're in the flow of things. So just like a pretty simple trade, we'll hide the parameters of the trade for now. We'll come back into this shortly. So what we've got, and we'll just take it from the highest time frame all the way down, is what we have first of all in this region here is a really nice 3-day retest into the former support region here. So a really nice cluster here of support with the breakdown and now the bearish retest on the 3-day. RSI below the 50 level. So really nice parameters are initially for kind of setting out our thought process and basis around this trade. Hop down to the daily, and obviously what we're seeing is, you know, very, very similar picture in here. We've got the spikes into the 340 region, but so far just continuing to reject off this level at 330. And what you can see as well is the RSI here rejecting, hopefully, touch wood, the 50 level for another rotation to the downside, which again would be in line with the 3-day picture of what we're seeing, where we would expect this region to reject on the bearish retest that it's currently undergoing. 12-hour, very similar picture. You know, we're just sort of maintaining up here at the moment. There's probably a line underneath here somewhere, so we're just maintaining underneath here, and again we'd be hoping for the breakdown of this ascending structure and the retest with that. 4-hour dipping under the 50, but it's happened on a couple of occasions previously, but we'd really be hoping that this starts to reject soon. And then obviously then the hourly picture again, just playing into the lower time frame of what we're seeing. So really BNB is a higher time frame play, it's a swing play, it's a short opportunity as long as we get the breakdown here. Realistically, we want to have the stop above this swing high over here around the 326s. We shouldn't really be getting back up into challenging that area again. If we consider that, you know, shorts fill here, shorts fill here, shorts fill here, then really we should be at the point that this is starting to try and break down to hit some of those short targets versus trying to spike back up into this region. If we do get a spike up into this region, then we'd probably be more concerned that actually the inverse is going to happen and we'll end up breaking out through the top of this. So for now, it's really just a case of like watching and waiting on the position and seeing what happens with the action that we're seeing here. We've got a lot of kind of like grinding downtrend here to try and clear through. So we may see just, you know, a continued squeeze up here because we need to try and get rid of some of this, right? That's all the way down here. And I think again, that's kind of what is taking place at the moment. I think everything still looks like a piece of shit, really. I don't think there's many attractive things out there. AXS. I mean, AXS just wants to die from here, which is unfortunate. I should really like it to challenge a little bit further. It looks as though it's responding to the 23 level in line with the hourly, whereas this level here is drawn from the 4-hour. Where we've just got the really nice interaction here and here. So we've got these nice two kind of pinch points around what we're assuming now is kind of the blow off region here. So we've got this area down here at 2380, and then obviously we've got the same here as the support region. And so really looking for AXS to get into this region here at the upper 23s, you know, before really piling into any potential short position here. And we're treating this slightly differently because this has been a very strong rally. So we're treating it slightly differently in terms of trying to get some downside correction from this versus trying to join in. So I think for me, it's just a case of waiting on AXS and seeing if we do get to tap into up here somewhere. And again, that might be in line with any continued efforts to squeeze some of the selling that we've been seeing on BTC and ETH, etc. Like personally, I don't think it's time to be longing anything. I think, you know, like last night was the opportunity. So when we saw some of the momentum creeping through on, you know, things like Sand and AXS again on the open yesterday, I think that was the time. And I think that the response from that, you know, the fact that AXS went like 10% up and now is down 6% on the day, is a really good sign that it's probably not ideal conditions to be trying to long anything right now. I think Bitcoin is for me is kind of on the edge of the cliff. Right, it's like it's kind of hanging at the edge of the cliff, and I think that it needs some work to be saved, because everything from the higher time frame perspective, like I posted about, I think last weekend, right, or maybe at the start of this week, right, when I said like it feels as though Bitcoin's ready for, you know, some sort of like expansion, and to the downside would be the first thought. Like it feels like it's really close to that happening, because we're just hanging on this 30k level. We're seeing nothing that's sort of bringing us back above that level, and we just look like we're really struggling up here. We know that the structure is obviously, you know, massively in favor of the bears. We know that just continued lower highs now, lower lows being put in, and we're just back down right at the bottom of this region. Daily RSI has turned around, it's rejected the 50 and looks as though we could get the impulse to the downside. So I don't know, it just doesn't feel like the right conditions to try and be, you know, taking any positions on anything for now, even NFT based stuff. Because if this goes and this hits 24, then obviously the rest of the market's gonna get smacked pretty hard. Original stop was at 318 for BNB. Yeah, like it's kind of like a loose stop. Like it's there because I have to have it there, because you know, like some people in the group need a little bit more hand holding, but I would suspect that that would probably end up changing into the 325s, or certainly the 323s, depending on the price action we see develop. So it's kind of just there because I got to include a stop for now, versus me kind of being like, this is my hard and fast stop, because really what I'd like to do is be able to add to shorts above there. What about the SAN daily div locked? Yeah, so that and AXS. Right, like AXS is going to lock in that triple daily, I think, here. I don't think there's, I mean, it would take some serious effort to get away from this triple up here, which is the really nice thing about AXS, because what it means with this particular situation on AXS is, like, a lot of people will think they're going to be late to trying to short this because it's now down from the 29s already. So a lot of people are going to assume that they're late, whereas I will be under the assumption that this daily divergence has not yet played out. And so therefore we would still expect downside from this sort of divergence that's developed over here. And we have got 3 lower highs in between each of these peaks. So I think a lot of people will sit back and assume that they can't short AXS, whereas I think there's a lot of potential downside still when this actually triggers. Rune. Yeah, I just lost the bottom of the range. You know, if we tidy this up to being a daily. Rune's been pretty clean. You know, we said about that when Rune was trading in this kind of 4-hour range that was originally mapped out here. But this has been pretty clean. You know, it's just rejected off the bottom of this former support region here and then sold off. And obviously there was the negative news as well yesterday. We had the negative news, which obviously caused this. And then obviously today, no pickup. But look at the RSI. The RSI is just in a position again. It looks as though it wants to continue this rotation to the downside. Best case scenario is that nothing confirms the rotation to the downside and we continue to go sideways. You know, that would be obviously the preferred outcome for a lot of people. I don't care. I really want everything to go a lot lower. You know, I want ETH to 1400, so I can buy more JPEGs. Will you play XS short soonish, or you wait for them to get a bit higher? I think waiting to get a bit higher. Like, I think that around the 24 is a sensible spot to wait for. And again, we could be incorrect in terms of, well, number one, I'm already short, right? But if I was going to post this, then I think we need to start tagging this 24 here. Now we may not get there because this is looking pretty gross, and we already know that BTC's in the position where we're kind of like not, we're not out of the woods here despite the pump. This is still a lower high and structurally is still identical for this downtrend. So I would like AXS to get higher, and if it goes down, then obviously I'm gonna not be able to post a trade. Checked out Parallel today, thanks for the tip, really liked it. To be honest, it's gonna be my first NFT exposure. Just wanted to know if bidding is like a gas war of sorts, or it's more chill. I would suspect, it depends on what happens over the next few weeks, but I would suspect that Parallel will probably be quite a popular drop, and therefore I would probably expect gas fees to be pretty high. So yeah, I would just be aware that the gas is probably going to be looks like a pretty decent area for a bearish retest, to be honest. As of right now. Looks like it's just heading up for the bearish retest here. This looks like 2018 alts all over again. Just looks as though it's going to head into, kind of one of the major support levels that it had here, and then still be bearish. Yeah, short already. There's an hourly div on AXS, so I took a chance that I could take a short up here. There's an hourly div between these two highs here. So I ended up with an entry that was 2750s because I waited for this sell-off here. So basically once this red candle came in, then I was pretty happy the divergence was locked in, and the rest I got lucky with. The other thing that I did was added to the position here, because this was a pretty decent attempt at a lower high, and it took out the stops from here. So I think my average is like 26.50 or something now. Have you been following traditional markets? So July and August, slow months. Typically the summer is slow for traditional. It's kind of the classic thing about Wall Street goes on holiday and doesn't care about the markets. So I think somebody pointed out that like the last like 3 weekends have been green. Like again, that wouldn't surprise me if we just we could have one of those events where we just essentially grind up until Sunday. Where the really fucking juicy juice is there's like 2 areas. And you take a look at kind of like the structure of the selling here and what's been going on. And there's like one area that's a key standout region, which is here. Let's take the Coinbase so it's clear. Like this is the key region here. So if we do get a green weekend, that's the key area. And we could just do exactly what we did last weekend, where we just grind up and then we just undo everything. But that 34.1 area is the key region. You mentioned if BTC drops a lot, then NFT coins will get crushed, but I thought recently they weren't caring what BTC was doing. Yeah, they don't. But there's a difference, right? Like, they don't care what BTC is doing because essentially, you know, BTC is still just chopping around. Like, this is, for BTC, this is relatively low volatility in terms of what we're used to at the moment. Right, this is a relatively low volatility area, here and here, right, in this box. And so that's why alts are allowed to do what they're doing, because BTC isn't really doing a lot. If BTC does that, then shit gonna hit the fan, right? Because nothing survives a BTC sell-off. And especially if BTC heads down 10, 12, 15%, right, alts are gonna do double that, minimum. So it's just because it, you know, the NFT coins have just been fortunate because the market environment has largely been shitty sideways action for BTC. And alts have benefited, right? Which is why we saw that break in the market where we started to see different alts start to perform differently, right? Some alts performing well, other alts performing poorly. And we saw that separation in the market where we started to see, you know, actual movement by alts. Why is the 34.1k area important? Because that's an area of untapped supply. And I think BGC has a way of trying to navigate towards those areas. Right? Try and navigate towards those areas on weekends. So we can see that here's another one here. Right, this is one. And then this is one up here. So we can see from here that what we've got is essentially all of the highs. And structurally, this would make complete sense. Because structurally, we know that these are our lower highs. Okay, so we know from a higher time frame perspective, these are our lower highs. On a lower time frame, we know that they're also the kind of the clusters of supply. It's what forms the start of each of these sell-offs. So you actually look at the tops across here, and they're all very, very similar on BTC. Okay, they're all very similar. So we've got, you know, small consolidation here at the top before large sell-off. Consolidation here at the top before large sell-off. Consolidation at the top before large sell-off. Consolidation, right? They're all absolutely identical in the way that they form. Absolutely identical. And we tend to gravitate towards those areas because it's where the sellers get the most value. So it's where shorters get the most value from their positions because they're shorting into structurally the lower highs. Okay, they're structurally shorting into the lower highs of the downtrend, which is where shorters get maximum value. There's no reason if you're a shorter to be opening shorts, you know, like here on BTC. Because, you know, what you want to be doing is opening a short as close to that structural high as possible to get the most value from your position. You also get the tightest invalidation for your position. Right? So it works both ways. But we've tapped into near enough every other high. Okay, so every other high through here we've basically tapped into. We haven't tapped into this one at 34.1. And you can make an argument potentially 32, 33 may contain some supply here. So I think you could also make an argument that depending on how strong we are, this is an area that we might look at getting towards. But we know that, you know, the market has essentially been identical. You know, every single top situation here is formed in exactly the same way. Can a person scalp based on looking at supply and demand and RSI? Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I don't think I'd move the stop on AXS yet. Like, I'm just not that bothered about it. Like, I'm comfortable with the daily setup. I don't want to get stopped out, like, unnecessarily. Because I've got some room in AXS, right? I've got 10% above resistance, so I've got some room. You have your eye on some of these land auctions. Yeah. So I do, but I've started to try and organize my land stuff a little bit better. Try and be a little bit more selective about some of the areas that I've got. I really want to try and, focus on ensuring that I have connected property, connected land, versus just having land. It's like I own quite a lot of single plots, and I've started to either pick up second plots that are next door so I can create bigger plots of land, or just started to try and auction off some of those single plots just to try and rotate into land that I can have as joined up. No, it's not in there. It's not in there. And the reason it's not in there is because it's an incredibly fortunate position that is taken on a Binance account with about $10,000 in that I logged into the other day. And just market shorted when I saw the divergence on AXS. So the reason it's not in there is basically because I gambled my money away in the hopes that I was going to finally hit a short position that worked after 2 failed ones on AXS. And I couldn't willingly share that information with 400 other people, knowing that shorting into price discovery for the third time wouldn't have been great. Just, yeah, support and resistance and RSI, key ones. Just keep my eye on the Pegs auction, which is, I think I discussed it last week, which is by Matt Fury, the creator of Pepe. Hopefully quite a lot of interest in them this week, considering I paid heavily for mine last week. Don't want to expose this to another loss. Yeah. Don't want to ruin my own record. Trying to stay above 50% successful trades. You doing Goblin Goons tonight? It's relatively interesting. Like, I might mint some. What time do they go live? Let's see, Goblin Goons. It's a relatively okay concept. Like, I fucking hate the art, but I mean, what are they each? 0.03? Yeah, so I might take like 10 or 20. Hope that I get a rare one that I can flip for the cost. 8,500. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I think the art looks fucking awful, but and like the concept about, like, you know, sending them into what do they call it? The Pit of Everlasting Fire. Like, that's relatively decent. Like, I kind of like that. Yeah, that's kind of alright. Thoughts on using Heikanashi candles for trading? You can use whatever you want, as long as you're successful with it. It doesn't really matter. Like, Heiken-Ashi is great for trend following. Simplifies a lot of things. You know, it's similar to Renko in that regard. So, you know, again, no issues. It's just make sure that whatever you like, don't do it just because, you know, you suddenly think you're going to be profitable. Like, if you're doing it because you've got an idea about how you want to trade using Heiken-Ashi, then sure. Like, it makes sense. But don't kind of just switch to it and think, well, this is the new way that I'm now profitable. So just be sensible. Oh yeah, this is pegs. So I think there's 10, another 10 up for auction today, which are these ones in green. And then these are the ones underneath that have sold already. And you look at the value of this in terms of this project. Like first auctions, first week, average price of like, you know, 1.5, 2 ETH per one of these. And then the Pepe went for 10. The Dazzler Pepe went for 13. And then next week, already increasing, doubling the floor. 2.5 ETH, 3 ETH, 4 ETH, 5 ETH for the Smiler. And then the week after, starting to pick up again. 7 ETH, 6 ETH, 7, 10, 7, 7, 10, 20. So this week will be interesting to see what these guys go for this week. You know, given that there's, you know, a continued rising interest on these, certainly in the valuation on ETH anyway. So somewhere to follow for the new projects for minting. Like I always say the same, just follow D's. Right? DWZE. So his name is D's Fi. Right, this man. Just follow this man. Because anything that is worthwhile to mint, he will tweet about. And I value this man's opinion very, very much when it comes to NFTs. So if things are worth minting, then this man will speak about them. He hosts quite a lot of spaces. So you can hop in and just listen to what they're talking about. Covers quite a lot of stuff, especially for like minting, for minting purposes. So I don't know, that's kind of where to go to. And the reason that's the case is like there's so much shit out there that you'll get caught off guard and you'll end up putting money into all sorts of absolute trash that will never sell, because there's a lot of minting projects going on all the time. So you really just got to narrow down what's worthwhile minting and what isn't. I'm really struggling with taking profit. A few days ago I was in 2 trades Krillon suggested. Nowhere near the take profit levels, but it was decent profit, like something like 2% portfolio size. But nowhere near the TP levels, so I closed 1 10 in the red and another 2 in the green. Same thing with UB's BTT short. I was in the green and now that's in the red. Are there any strats or ideas to manage this or to play this better? Like the thing that I would say to you is, like, if you're in a position where you have money, right, and like you're looking at your profit and you're in a position where you're like, fuck, this is like a really good piece of profit for me, this is a really nice profit that I'm happy with. If you start to have those thoughts because the PNL is starting to dictate the trade, you know, you should always close like some of your position. So ideally, closing 50% of the position whenever you're having those feelings is a really good thing to do. Don't worry so much about the technical levels or the take profit regions. right? Don't worry about that, because that's all essentially kind of like nonsense anyway. So make sure that if you have sizable profit, like you said, 2% of your portfolio in profit, strip some of it away, right? Take some of it off. Make yourself feel better about banking that profit. Biggest thing you can do. Fuck the TP levels, right? Who cares? Who cares where the fuck any analyst thinks it's going to go? If you have good money and you start to have those thoughts that creep into your head, right? Every trader does. They start to look at their P&L and they think, fuck, that's a really nice piece of profit there. Take some off, right? 100% take some off. Like, your situation will always beat some technical level drawn on a chart. Yeah. Don't worry about that. Like, it doesn't matter about your portfolio. It doesn't matter about your account size, right? So, like, it doesn't matter. You're saying, I'm playing with only 2,500, and the risk is 1%, so $25. 2% is only $50. It doesn't matter. Like, again, it's in relation to whatever situation you're utilizing, right? And like, let's say you're doing that because you're building an account and you're looking for, some sort of, system or way of trading that is going to make you feel more comfortable. Like, it doesn't matter what size the account is. Like, it's relevant to the account size. And especially if you're trying to keep tight risk management rules, then it's even more important, because you need to keep that tight risk management, and therefore any opportunity to increase the portfolio size by 2% is a good opportunity. Scoop one of the 3x3s? Holy shit. How much did it cost you? Has anyone told you your voice is quite ASMR-y? Yeah, a few people on stream always say that. It's weird. Because I fucking hate ASMR. 46,500 sand. Okay, nice. Yeah, you've done pretty well. Some 3x3s are getting a bit more than that, I think, over the last couple of weeks. So it seems like a relatively good price. FIFA says these NFT things are the key element of a bubble, right? NFTs will survive past BTC's bear market for sure. I think NFTs are... I'm glad that people still view them as a bubble, because that means that I get more excited about them. Any thoughts on how the floor prices of NFTs could be impacted if ETH goes for a dip? I think with NFTs, it's a relatively kind of like interesting... it's an interesting area, because we've got punks. So, like, for example, like the punks floor, I think is like, let's call it 20 ETH. It's like 19.9 now, right? So it's 20 ETH, which means that the floor price has gone up from 13 ETH to 20 ETH within the space of, I think, 4 or 5 weeks. Okay, so a significant impact in the floor price of punks. Now, if ETH sells off heavily, what you can see from the NFT world is a rebalancing of prices to still achieve the same dollar value. Because a lot of people in the NFT space care more about the dollar value for their work than they do about the ETH value for their work. Right? Crypto people care more about ETH, or, fucking stacking sats, whatever bullshit you want to put on it. Whereas quite a lot of people in the NFT space care more about the dollar value of their pieces. And so what you tend to see is that when ETH sells off heavily, we saw it last time that ETH really sort of sold off, is that there's quite a quick repricing that goes on for things like punks to raise that value. So like the floor on punks is probably a large percentage demand based in terms of increasing in the floor value. And then secondly, it's also an attempt to preserve USD value. So I think we'll see basically when it comes to the NFT projects. I think a lot of projects, like I said, will try and make sure that balance is achieved in USD and not care too much about the ETH valuation. So we'll see a lot of projects, rebalance by 30% if ETH sells off 30%. And if they don't, then I'm a very happy man, because that's exactly the situation I want. Basically my game plan for buying punks at the moment is wait for a stronger ETH correction and then quickly swoop on those that haven't rebalanced, because I'm sat in USD primarily. And so, I'm looking to be an ETH buyer. And therefore, once I'm an ETH buyer, I want to be able to try and swoop in on some of those projects that have not been revalued. Regarding taking profit, it's also a bit of a psychological thing. Fear of missing out other moves would be a smarter idea to move the stop loss when the trade turns against you. No. Moving the stop loss is the worst thing you can do. Like, moving the stop loss is basically like and this is one of the things that I always used to say to people is, if you are planning to move your stop loss, right, there's a reason you're looking to do it. And usually the primary reason people move the stop loss is not because the trade has changed. It's because they have profit that they now don't want to lose. That's the primary reason people change their stop loss. And when you do that, every time you go to move your stop loss, if you find yourself doing it for the reasons that I've just said, the first thing that you should think to yourself is, actually, should I be taking profit off this position? Because I'm obviously nervous, right? I'm obviously now nervous about this position, which is causing me to think that I should move my stop loss. Usually moving your stop loss is not the right thing to do, and you usually end up obviously getting stopped out of your position for less profit than you could have achieved by just removing some from the position at that point in time. So anytime you go to move your stop loss because you want to lock in profit, the first thing you need to question is, should I actually just be taking a percentage of my profit off the table here? Because there's a reason you want to move your stop. And it's usually, like I said, the profit is significant for you, or you're nervous there's going to be some sort of reversal. Do you think the ETH floor will drop in case ETH will rise in the future for the same rebalancing thought, or will keep rising? I think in that situation it will probably keep on rising. Like, I think that's why the NFT space is like relatively unique, is I don't think there'll be a rebalancing. So when we saw, so like for example, like the first punk that I sold, essentially it was like a 1x like ETH long, because what I did was I bought it at 35 and I sold it for like 37. Is that right? 35 and 37 ETH. But when I bought it, ETH was 2200, and when I sold it, ETH was 4000. And so like the actual kind of USD profit from that punk sale was like 60,000. But that price level kind of remained even though ETH had doubled in value at that point in time. So I think really it's a case of like the NFT space seems to really be protecting its USD value, but I don't think there's any acknowledgement for that on the upside, right? Like if your punk has a 20 floor ETH, you don't lower it to 15 if the price goes, or if ETH goes to, 4K. Maybe we'll see that in the future, right? Maybe if ETH starts to get, too expensive again, maybe we'll see that, where people try and lure in buyers by acknowledging the US dollar value of ETH versus, you know, just owning ETH. I understand the gaming coins, but why do people pay a lot of money for a digital Pepe button? It's a couple of things, like collectability. You know, for example, in this case, the artist having a pretty good internet standing in terms of the creator of Pepe, you know, producing an art collection. Rarer because there's only 100 pieces made with only 5 Pepes in there. Right? So you got all of these things in terms of, you know, what creates value. How do we create value? Do that through scarcity, demand, identity, right? To be able to share that you've bought one of these things and people associate it with being a larger purchase, and therefore, you know, what that does to people's overall view of you as a person and how wealthy you are. Right, so, you know, lots of different reasons why a Pepe spinning button would be valued at, you know, $25,000. You often move stop loss after hitting TP1. I thought that was to protect profit. No, it's not. It's because usually after TP1 has been hit, there's usually a fresh invalidation point for the trade. Right, so that's why the stop loss is moved. The stop loss is only ever moved for my positions if there is a valid reason why that stop loss should now be different. This is a really nasty divergence here on BTC. Like, it looks weak as shit through here. Like, super unusual to see this. So yeah, it's usually because by the time we've hit one of those key areas, TP1, TP2, whatever, we've had enough price action to create a fresh invalidation point for our trade. So it's a case of, you know, you can view it as locking in profit, I guess, but it's done from the perspective of the trade is now fundamentally different. Like, let's say, for example, we're shorting Bitcoin here, right, and we short here, and we've got a target of a fresh low. Okay, and the price action does this. Now it sells off. We have our stop up here. Right, it does this. Okay, our stop loss is above this high here. And then what we would do is after this low is breached here, in this price action that I've drawn, after this low is breached, we'd be able to move our stop down to have our stop underneath here, over here, right? Because we've got a fresh now invalidation that we shouldn't be taking out any highs. And we have a fresh invalidation. But most people, what they do is they have a trade that looks like this, and what will happen is actually Bitcoin doesn't create any fresh invalidation for you. It just does this. And if it does this, what people then tend to do is start sliding down their stop. So you start sliding down their stop down here to try and protect profit. But there's nothing, if you do that, that stops the trade or BTC from doing this. Right? Because you didn't wait. You didn't wait until you had something structurally that changed and gave you a fresh invalidation. Do you see the difference? Right, when we wait for the high to be formed and the low, and when we clear that low and we break or continue the structure, then we have a fresh invalidation. When we try and do it to protect profit, usually on the first impulse to the downside, a lot of people get stopped out because price will do this. Yeah, alright. Alright, so we've done an hour, and actually if I end it here, we've also done a pretty good amount of discussion on some kind of nice educational points as well. We covered BNB, we covered BTC, ETH, a couple of other requests, and we've had a good discussion about taking profit, moving stop, what invalidation looks like, etc. So a pretty good time to round things up and keep this as a nice condensed video for people to rewatch. Alright, so I'll be producing videos this weekend. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your Friday. Enjoy the weekend as well. I'll get the daily updates out. NFT videos coming tonight. And I will speak to you guys a little bit later on. Enjoy the rest of the day.